So in this edition, we get to speak with Patrick Powers, Patrick M. Powers. Now I know Patrick as a speaker, first and foremost, but I also know him as a marketeer and as a networking guy. So this is the first question I asked Patrick, how did he describe himself? And a little bit to my surprise, he came back with as a copywriter. But when you think about it, it's actually language and the use of language which underlines all of those things, both his messaging that he uses from stage, in his marketing material, and his way of influencing people through his networking. So Patrick has actually built the Meetup, biggest business meetup group in Europe. That is no small achievement, and actually that group is well on the way to becoming the world's biggest business meetup group. So that's a really phenomenal thing. Now I know Patrick is a real giver. He's helped me in the past and has never asked anything in return. So I think he's a natural born sort of networking guy. And I think it's a lot to learn from that. I've certainly learned a lot speaking with Patrick during this interview. And I think you'll get a lot of insights and enjoyment from it too. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's dive into the interview. So I don't know if you know, first time we actually crossed paths, I was at an event long time ago, showing my age, where you were in London on stage giving a presentation. I actually can't remember exactly what it's about, but my first experience of you was as a speaker. But since then, I now know you more as a marketeer and very much heavily involved in networking. So, so if you had to describe yourself, how would you do that? Are you a speaker, networker, marketing?
That is something I'm struggling with because I kind of identify myself as a copywriter,
Yeah.
but nobody understands what it is, right? There's like very few people understand what copywriting is, and even a lot of people that think they know what it is, it really doesn't cover what I'm doing. But really, what I'm more in a way that people can understand it. I'm an expert at influence. So whether it's the spoken word, how to influence somebody on a one-to-one basis at a networking event, in a sales situation, or how to influence an audience, or how to influence people on a podcast, or how to influence people via the written word when we talk about sales funnels and copywriting, right? So the most of the time, I'm spending time on teaching people how to speak with confidence and impact, or how to write words in a way that captivate people, irresistible messages. That's basically what I'm about.
Okay. And so that's both spoken and written down, any sort of areas where you're delivering that message. Okay.
It's funny,
So,
people when they, for example, find out that I also write pitches, it's, "Oh, you also write pitches?" Yeah, it's
yeah,
words. It doesn't
yeah.
matter whether it's written words or spoken words, it's words, and that impacts our brain, and that's what marketing is all about, is how to find a message that impacts that other people's brain in the way that we want it to either get attention, to create trust, or to create desire. That's basically the three main things you have to trigger in people's brains.
And do you find that it is different in a sort of live environment, say speaking from stage or a workshop, that environment, as opposed to on a page? I feel that linking into the pitches element you talked about, I've thought myself that if you're sort of online, your marketing needs to be very sort of narrow and very deep. You need to pick a very sort of pretty tight niche, because you're kind of competing against everyone else's online, which is almost everybody.
Mhm.
Whereas in a kind of live environment, it's a more of a localized audience, obviously, and therefore what you need to focus on needs to be a little bit more general. Because if you become super incredibly specific and super niche, well, you might only have one person in that audience that actually fits that bill.
Yeah, you're right. I never really think about it that much because I've chosen a niche that is big enough that it appeals to a lot of people, and at the same time is small enough that it's not too wide. So for myself, but you're actually right. And of course, if you're talking to one person at a networking event, you must try to find out first what is important to that person, so you can tailor your pitch and frame what you do in a way that serves them. Right? It's
Yeah.
interesting to.
Yeah, I mean, of course, actually, it's good to tell the audience here that I believe you've actually created and sort of managed the largest meetup not just in London, but actually Europe. Is this correct?
Yeah, it's the biggest business meetup. If you go to meetup.com, there are different categories. And there's one called
Sure.
business and career, and so we're the biggest in the business career category in Europe, and the second biggest in the world actually.
Wow.
And just yesterday, I was checking, and we're actually gaining a number one quite significantly. So
Oh, good.
I think we'll end up being the number one business meetup group in the world, which is
Wow.
insane. I mean, it's like I can't
It
even
is.
I can't understand it. Like it actually only really recently dawned on me, and we're talking about weeks ago. I've never really taken it that seriously. I was just like, oh, it's just I just feel the second biggest business meetup group in the world. I think it because it was something that came very natural to me, and it didn't. For me, it was just it just happened, right? So
Wow.
because I didn't put that much effort into doing it, maybe I didn't take it that much.
Or do you think that
Give it
was the secret source of it? Do you think that was actually
oh,
the
there's lots of
best
things. Lots
approach?
of things. Yeah, but the
Maybe it's
interesting thing,
because you
yeah,
wasn't sort of desperate for that milestone, perhaps. And you do also have a
yeah,
natural
yeah.
fondness for this.
I'll get to in a second what really has made us that. But first thing is an important point to stress that I think we discount some of our own strengths and accomplishments, right? And I read somewhere a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, that you should try to see yourself as through other people's eyes. And I start doing that, and then I start thinking about all the amazing comments I've had from people about my events. And it's like, I've been dealing with self doubt practically my whole
Mhm.
life. I grew up,
Yeah.
I was had horrible mindset. I was afraid of people. Had social anxiety. So it's been a big theme for myself in my life to not really believe in myself or value what I do. And so when I start seeing myself more as through other people's eyes, I actually started to change the perception of myself, and it was a major one.
Okay. And that was a relatively recent thing, like in the last few years, or
Literally in the last 6 months.
really? Wow.
Yeah.
So
So
how did that happen? Because you was already at that stage, a well-respected, well-known speaker, already had the meetup group, highly established and a decent scale to it. So how did you achieve that still with kind of self-doubt with you?
yeah, that's a good question. I think it's just survival instinct. So what happened is I started my first business at 21 because I hated being in a job, and I went bankrupt really quickly. And the reason was that I had no sales skills and marketing skills. I thought it was all about the idea, right? Which is very common to think amongst startups. Like, oh, it's just you just have to have a great idea. Okay, in fact, the idea is relatively insignificant, right? I think the problem, or why people come to that conclusion, is because it's the businesses with great ideas. Those are the ones that we see in the media. Right?
Mhm.
Someone who comes up with a brilliant breakthrough idea that is new and interesting. Those are the ones we see. We don't see amazing ideas about Pretz, or Specsavers or whatever, because they're just ordinary ideas. But by far the most businesses are just ordinary ideas executed well, marketed well, right? So, so I started studying what went wrong in my first bankruptcy, and I figured out, I don't have any marketing and sales skills, and that's what it's all about. I started to study that, and I fell in love with it. I was just obsessed with it, studied it 24/7, and I thought I might as well turn it into a business. And then failed forward with many businesses, and again because I had enormous trouble with my self-esteem, and also I just didn't have sales and marketing skills. It's not something that comes overnight, right? Especially the sales skills if you have challenges with confidence, which I had.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
sales is it's a massive area, and I do think it's highly neglected. I mean, as we actually move even more, continually towards us more of a digital on
yep.
web presence, you can't really do hard sales even if you wanted to. I would imagine, but I would say that sales in the traditional sense, trying and speaking to one person one to one and getting that sale confirmed during that conversation, I'd say I'm pretty bad, or certainly got a lot of room for growth there. Even though I've
Mhm.
done it, I've done door to door sales, I've done tele
Oh
sales,
wow,
obviously a
takes some
long time
guts.
ago. And yeah, but I hated every second of it, but I do think it was valuable, and I wasn't terrible at it. I mean, I actually was amongst the, best of my little gang there, but all through total pain uh, and yeah, and nothing confirmed more that I not wanted to do. I was doing it as in the middle of university. I was taking a full-time job during summer to try and basically make some money, and I was doing sales jobs. That was the best way to earn commission and do it. I was doing,
Yeah,
I'll do anything really. So yeah, I was doing door-to-door sales at one stage, and
that's great, man.
telemarketing another time. But yeah, that has still been of some use. Um, but I
I'm
guess the point I was trying to get to is that there is a skill there, and I don't think I ever really got it. But people that are, it's a really valuable skill, and I imagine that the art is gone.
yeah.
I think.
But
Um,
say again the question. Sorry.
I think the art of sales is probably diminishing. Uh, are we all using most of us using
No,
other tools? No.
I, I
Okay.
I don't think so. I think for startups, they are probably discounting the value of it, but I don't think it's going away at all. And like when you're on a video or a live audience or whatever, you need to have the same skills. You need to be able to close, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think startups, because they're afraid of it, they try to get around it and think, okay, we can just do stuff online, which in some cases is possible, in some cases. But I'll tell you, you will speed up your growth tremendously if you can close, like if you can really good sales person. And the great thing is, once you've mastered those skills, you can literally survive in any field, right? And you don't need fancy marketing campaigns. You can close people in something of high value and get a business going very, very quickly if you can actually influence people one to one.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's say, a person has, maybe they recently pivoted their business or they've got a new product or service. Um, I mean, where would you start? Would you focus on the customer's journey, the avatar, trying to learn about that person and then sort of replay what they're saying to you back to them and kind of build rapport?
In which situation are we talking about now?
So let's say a company is a relatively new business, or they've got a new product or service that they're looking to sell, and they've launched the product. Maybe they've got a web page for it. Maybe they're doing a webinar, or they are booking
You talk about
calls.
online, like web page. You
Yeah,
want to sell. Okay. Well, the first thing that you said, in terms of the avatar, that's absolutely, um, it's the first thing that you must understand. And so many people, they just don't get it. And what is taught out there about avatars is honestly, it's superficial and weak. It's like, oh, so where do they live? How old are they? What education background do they have? How much money are they making? But you need to go way, 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 way deeper into
yeah,
the
that's just a
deep.
demographic, right? That's not
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
characteristic of a person. Yeah. Okay.
No, you need to go much, much deeper into the emotional side. What are their deep fears? What are the irrational desires? Um, what do they believe? What do they believe about themselves? What do they believe about life? What do they believe about you in terms of your category of suppliers? So, like for example, what do they believe about marketers? Do they believe that we are honorable? Do they believe that we're a little bit dishonorable? Do they believe that we cut corners and we just try to sell people and stuff that they don't need? Like we need to understand all those beliefs to be able to create marketing around them. Because if they believe, for example, that we are in a glamorous industry, it's obviously completely different to sell to them than if they believe that salespeople are basically cutting corners and a little bit dishonest. Because if they believe that, then we have to address that belief and address that objection. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So I guess you're trying to find out and learn what those objections are so that you can satisfy them, even if they're not actually explicitly asked, right?
Sure. And
Yeah.
political beliefs might also be relevant. So, like, you really want to go like drill really, really down, and even in some products, religious beliefs might be relevant. So you want to drill deep, deep, deep down. Their own personal beliefs, the beliefs about you, the industry that you're in. You also want to find out what what experiences do they have? What perception do they have about people in your industry? Have they had bad experiences before? Do they generally mistrust you? Like not you personally, but
Sure.
your type of business, and all those kind of things. You've got to go deep, deep, deep to have this picture of them, and then only then can you start to do proper marketing,
And
proper copyright.
how do you get to that? Because that's quite deep stuff. That's not superficial stuff. You need to have some kind of rapport with someone to be able to kind of interrogate them that deeply. And we not always have that opportunity, I would suggest.
Yeah, sure. So in most cases, when you're marketing something, you market fairly well, and you just try to step into the shoes of them. And if you can't, if you haven't been there for a good amount of time, you definitely want to go out and interview people. You just want to try to step into their shoes. And I think this is a very valuable skill, is to walk a mile in their shoes. Just really step into their skin and imagine how would life be if I was in that situation. For example, my target market are small business owners, medium-sized business owners. What is it like to be them, right? Well, they're scared about the future. They're frustrated that they try marketing that's not working. They're angry about competitors that steal clients away from them unethically. And so you just want to try to step into that picture and imagine it as well as you can.
Mm.
And
And you talked about,
if
sorry,
no, go on.
you talked about interviewing people.
Yeah,
You know,
no, absolutely.
how do you do that? I mean, I think that'd be quite hard to persuade someone to agree to an interview. Obviously, your sales skills are working for you there.
No, so the thing about influence is that nobody does anything apart from their own selfish reasons,
Mhm.
right? So you have to appeal to people's self-interest in anything, right? But what is interesting is that you don't necessarily have to give them or offer them something of tangible value, and that's what I'm when I train people in influencing person to person and networking skills. This is something I cover in depth about how to find out what do people actually want. Well, there's certain things that we want that is completely universal to every single person on the planet, right? We want to be appreciated, loved. We want to feel that we are valuable. We want to feel that we are special. We want to feel that we are important. And those are things that you can give them. You can give them those feelings without any cost whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
We also want to feel that we, as I said, are valuable, and then provide value in the world, and then maybe that we even have made an impact in the world. So maybe you can appeal to those senses and just or to those needs and say, look, I would love to have your help, and I'd love to have your opinion about this, and this is how it can impact. This is how it can impact me, and this is how it can impact other people if you help me.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to give them a pitch where you appeal to some kind of a need that they have.
Mm. And I
Right?
do
But
think I know a lot of people are sort of using online surveys and things like this, and I have to say I've got a very, very low opinion of them. I would swap one good face-to-face, pretty deep conversation with one prospect or customer over 10,000 online surveys. I just
I
find
agree.
them
I agree. They can be
so,
misleading.
yeah, absolutely dangerous. Actually,
Visual.
you know,
Yeah.
it's actually dangerous. And it's if someone says, "Yeah, I quite liked it," it's very different to "I really quite liked it." And yet, on a survey, they're the same answer. And in
Yeah.
person, someone is by their passion, their energy, the way they're using words face to face, the fact they've even joined you face to face is a start. That's the stuff that can really shape. Now, I guess logically, it would sound dangerous to kind of base and maybe adjust a product or service based on one person's view.
No, you
I know
can't.
nothing's guaranteed, but it's usually indicative of a lot of people, in my experience.
No, absolutely. Because none of us are completely unique. Right? If
Yeah, we're
there's
not as
something
unique as we think we are, actually, I think.
no, no, no. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if you get a picture of something from one person, well, that person might be representative of 15 to 20% of the population, literally, right? And you might only need to interview in depth 8 to 10 people, 15 people, and if you got it, apart from those 10 to
I think that
15
would give
people,
amazing insights. If you had that many deep conversations, I think that would give huge insights. I mean, I've always thought with a startup business, I guess I would apply this to any kind of new product or service for a company, it's basically to stay in the game long enough to get the insights. And insights are stuff like that, stuff that happens as a consequence of either in-depth conversations or multiple conversations, experience of working with customers over time, perhaps, and eventually you start to learn some insights, that you can't get from a download or from a marketing
Mhm.
video or something. And once you've got those insights, that's when you can actually grow up as a business and start to scale up
Yep.
and deliver answers based on those insights. And that's when you start to hopefully pull away and start to get real growth and move away from your competitors who don't
Mhm.
understand those insights that you've got. And they usually come the hard way. I don't think there's many shortcuts to getting
Hmm.
those.
Well, if there is shortcuts, it's really understanding copywriting and sales funnels, right? It's the biggest shortcut. Like if you understand how to create a headline that captures the attention of your marketplace, then you can also test. And that's another thing. Instead of doing surveys, test 5 different headlines,
Hmm.
5 different offers, right? Or 10 or 15. Like when I recommend to somebody, to do a headline, what they need to start with is to write about 30 to 50 different headlines, right? Because you really will get some creative stuff out when you've written 10, 15 headlines and you don't think you can write more, then all the creative stuff will start to come out and you might get your gold nugget when you read your 30th or 50th.
Yeah.
Then you should narrow it down to the 10 best and then narrow it down to the 5 best. And then I'll recommend you test the 5 best or at least the 3 best. Because the thing is, and I've done this, even though I consider myself to be a great copywriter, and I know I am because I get great response rates and conversion rates, but uh, quite often, still, some of the headlines and whatever sub headlines or whatever subject lines in emails that I think is really great, some of them will still bomb, and it's the same thing. Even the top copywriters in the world, they will still write headlines that bomb and they'll also write headlines they don't really think will work well. That's going to be the winner, and that was
Yeah.
the case with me in a promotion for entrepreneurs in London once. I remember there was a picture. Now in Facebook marketing, the picture is actually also quite important. And there was a picture. I thought, nah, that's just this. It's too corny, or it's too. I didn't like the picture. So you know what? Let's just try to test it.
Yeah.
And it was a killer. I mean, it was the best ad we ever had.
Okay, so I want to quiz that a little bit, if you don't mind, because I find this quite a fascinating area. And my personal experience is, so we're talking about basically doing A/B testing of advertising headlines here, which could be a Facebook ad or something similar, right? Or various other media. So let's say, let's say to simplify things, I might have 2 different headlines. It's called A and B. Put those up. A is a clear winner in terms of the response. Maybe more people clicked on the advert, arrived at the landing page, etc. But if my product or service I'm trying to sell isn't a low cost item and often has a buying journey of several months, it's very hard. In fact, I'd even say it's almost impossible to really isolate what is the key thing that got them over the line. It's usually a consequence of multiple touch points, multiple adverts, email
Yeah.
messages, etc. So I can obviously do an A/B test and see through the stats pretty clearly, okay, more people clicked on this headline. But it's very hard for me to really judge later on, well, which was a better headline for us long term? Because let's say, again, simplify it, maybe you had twice as many people respond to A, but B might be a better audience segment for us. Maybe they're more affluent because of the headline isn't so clickbaity, for example. And again, I'm dumbing this down a little bit. That could potentially be the better headline for us. So I have actually found it quite hard to really reach some hard conclusions there. And sometimes and maybe because we're a small business, maybe not massive amounts of data, sometimes we go a little bit of a gut instinct. And yeah, I don't always feel that the data is as clear. It's all about interpret. The data in itself provides very minimal information, and then we have to
Yeah,
add
again, I think
kind of. Go on.
I think you said it right there. It might be because of too small data sample. Because if you have enough data, then it can show almost anything,
Yeah.
right? But so but let's say you narrow it down to 2 or 3 different headlines, and then you could relatively easily even manually track that. I mean, obviously, you want to narrow it down to headlines that actually generate the most leads, sort of. But again, as you said, it's not necessarily the one that generates the very most that are the best target market. You'll only find out later, but you have to keep on tracking that group of people that came in through this headline, through this. If you're closing manually at the end, which is necessary if you have a high-end service or product, right? You can't close people online. They don't buy through a sales letter if it's a service product that costs, let's say, more than £500, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the insights I talked about my last business, which was where I was running sort of the business and marketing side. It was a coaching business, and what eventually one of the conclusions and insights I would say we got to was that if we were able to sell, based on an online report, and we sold that report for just like $1, it's obviously not a great income stream, but the quantity of people that would then go on to purchase and spend thousands of dollars with us, maybe as a retreat or an ongoing sort of coaching service, was massively high. So I can't remember exact stats, but was phenomenal. So we just knew that, well, if we could persuade them to purchase this report, that's a really incredible prospect for us. And whereas if they were, maybe watching all our videos and stuff, or 1,000 other different metrics we were kind of looking at, it wasn't as clear. That was like the golden nugget for us. I'm sure there were others there which maybe we hadn't fully uncovered or fully appreciated, but when we latched onto that, was a business changing thing. Once we realized that, okay, well, we can just do that through ads. We can drive more people to that. We're going to get more really good prospects. They've demonstrated to us they don't mind spending online. We were asking people to purchase online, so that was an important thing for us. And I think that got rid of a lot of sort of tire kickers as well. So yeah, it was an insight for us. So it can take a while to get to these insights, but I think they are very, very valuable when you get there.
Usually.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about. Go on.
But when you find a group of people like that, where you say, okay, these guys are valuable, they're converting very profitably. I think one of the mistakes that people often make is that they actually focus on getting more customers like that, instead of trying to also find out, how can we maximize the profit from this? How can we sell them more products and services? Because if they're already good buyers, they will typically buy even more. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think I've made that mistake myself, and I now have different tiers. And when I'm working with people, I strongly recommend, and usually with them, we will create these digital assets across like different leagues. You can call it funnels, whatever you want to call it, and you've got your product for prospects, your P4Ps, or something similar to that, which is like a marketing device. So, for example, our report. Then you've got an early stage, low cost item. And then you've got your core service, and then you've got your P2, which is your product 2. And if you've got lots from one category, that's not such a big bonus to the business. It's nice to have, but it's massively more valuable if you can line up these products. So, again, using that business as an example, we had various marketing things. We had our online, various downloadable PDFs, including this report, which became a key one for us. Then we would sell them an online coaching course, and then we'd get them from that onto the retreat. And also, we didn't get everybody, but having those different kind of price products in different leagues, whatever you want to call it, transformed the business. And it really transformed when we added the recurring revenue products. I always recommend people to look for and strive for an RR, a recurring revenue product. I think that's incredibly valuable. It helps provide some sanity to an otherwise challenging industry of entrepreneurship. I think. I really want to talk a little bit about networking. So I know you as a, we talk about marketing a little bit, and that's sort of, in that also includes kind of networking. From my own experience of knowing you as a friend as well, you're incredibly good at kind of putting people together. You know, you'll say, "Hey, Fred, you've got to meet Darren over here. Fred is looking for X. Darren does X. Why don't you guys have a chat?" You seem to be very good at doing that, but I have no idea how you do it. I mean, you've got a big network. How do you remember everybody? Do you have like a system for doing that? Do you just have a phenomenal memory for people and what they're doing and what they're looking for?
I'm just a brilliant dude. No, no,
Okay.
no. So I took some training some years ago about how to how to remember stuff.
Okay.
And
I need this
actually,
training.
I actually became so good at it that I also taught it. Okay.
Okay.
So I call it the rapid memory booster. And it really is quite extraordinary how you can become good at remembering stuff. And I'll give you an example. And people probably not believe in it, but I've demonstrated it live many times. I memorized a list of 1,000 random words, right? In the right order. Okay.
Is this a like
And
story technique?
yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, tell us
But it's more than that, and we can get into that a little bit. But basically, I memorized this list of 1,000 words, and I never got it wrong. And then once I reached 1,000, I realized, look, I could keep on going, but it's boring. It's just I don't want to go, because when you have that many words that are unrelated, it actually requires a little bit of maintenance.
Okay.
Right. It's not like you learn it once and you can remember it 10 years later. It just brain doesn't work like that. So it requires slight, once you've learned it, it requires a little bit of maintenance. And I just became tired of that. So, but anyway, the guy I learned it from, he learned the number pi with 27,000 digits, right? Imagine that, 27,000 numbers in the right order. It's just crazy. So your brain, if you say you have a bad memory, no, you don't. You're running bad programs. You're just using your brain in the wrong way. So one thing you can do, and basically the brain learns by association, but it's very, very important that those associations that you make are not sort of I'm looking for common.
Okay. Yeah, so it stands out. It's more memorable.
Yeah, because if they're common, they're just not memorable to the brain. So the more crazy you make the associations, the more vivid you make the movies. Like if you make movies in your mind with lots of movement, lots of sound, I make them big and vivid and unusual and crazy and funny and maybe even sexy. Something, I mean, something that relates to sex is very, very easy for the brain to remember,
Yeah.
right? So you create these stories in your mind and associate them with things. I use cartoon characters to make them fun and crazy and stand out and stuff like that. And that's how, until we were in entrepreneurs in London. And I think this is one of the things that kind of made us in the beginning, like apart from good copywriting, um, making people feel important, special when they arrive and at the event is absolutely crucial. And I'm just astounded by how few people do this. Now, I did it in the early days. I actually memorized the list of all our members, their names and their faces, until we were approximately 2,200 members. So even if I never saw them before, they arrived at the event. I've seen their face and their name online. And so I could see I never seen you before. You come and you register and say, "Hey, Simon, how's it going?" And you're like, "Holy shit,
Yeah.
you know my name." Right.
Yeah.
And if you feel special,
Mm.
then I
I've been the
stand out.
receiving end of that. I've been the receiving end of that, and I've got to say, it's kind of mind blowing, and it stays with you for a very long time. It really
Yeah.
is a very impressive thing. Yeah.
So yeah, so I focused on that again. Like when we reached about 2,000, then we hit that point where we started to grow really, really quickly, and then we just like there was too many members coming in to actually like sustain remembering all of them. Because I
Yeah.
mean now we're 27, we just reached 27,500 27,500.
Yeah.
So
Phenomenal.
that's
Yes. So do you want so it's just about learning, use that story technique to remember things. And when you have conversations with somebody, you would like perhaps build a little bit of a story about them kind of after the
yeah.
exchange to help remember them. And
Yeah, and then also like identifying people that are important, right? And how they could be a good lead for you or a good connection for you or somebody that you feel that they really know their stuff and then might be a good introduction to somebody in the future. And then obviously what you want to do is you take good notes. Like make sure you take good notes. You have a CRM system. I use Nimble. I love it. It's cheap, it's simple. And for social media, keeping track of people's social media is absolutely incredible. Um, so so making sure you take lots and lots of notes of them and use a CRM system where you can search those notes because it's just astounding. And I've tested so many systems, and I've just been so surprised about how few of them you can actually search the notes.
yeah,
Right? You can like
yeah,
tag people, but the tags are not they're not practical. Like for example, I know that you have a dog and you're a dog lover,
yeah,
or you play the piano, or you're from Hungary, or whatever. I can't create a bloody tag for every single feature of every single person I meet, right? But if I can search my notes and I put in there dog lover, and I remember that, or let's say you're a dog trainer. Okay, I know you're a dog trainer, and then one day I meet somebody who's looking for a dog trainer. And it's like, oh, you know what? I remember I have a dog trainer in my network, but I can't remember who it is. Well, I could go in and search that term, dog trainer or just dog. And then boom, all the people that I've put in my notes with dog trainer will pop up. I said, oh yeah, that's Simon. He's a dog trainer. Right.
yeah.
And then I
So
can introduce them. So I do that as well.
yeah, and obviously that you must have a natural networking element because I guess the question I also wanted to kind of go on to, I'm very curious about, is that's great. It's great to know someone. Everyone needs a Patrick in their lives that it can connect people. But for me, it would frighten the life out of me because obviously that takes time, energy, commitment to do that. And like, how do you measure? Maybe don't even try and measure the commercial return that we all run in business. I think
Yeah.
that's important. I don't think there's any problem with that. And if I were you, I guess I'd be worried that I was spending time helping somebody else, perhaps, rather than helping sell one of my products or services. So how do you measure it in any way, or do you just go, no, this is who I am, and I'm committed to doing this. It's one of my
That's an
values.
excellent question. And you know what? I mean, I don't measure it today because I absolutely 100% know the value of it.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It is not
Mm,
something that comes back to you after 6 months or a year necessarily. Sometimes it does, right?
mm,
But sometimes it takes years.
mm.
And
Yeah, I can believe
but
that.
obviously you can't spend 3 hours a day doing it, right? Because you have to focus on your business as well. But if there was one thing I can do differently in my life, like there's a few, I make many mess ups and many things that I would wish I could change. One of them would be to go back and in my early days really focus on creating a strong network, not a big network, but a strong small one, where you making a deep impact on a few people as opposed to try to make just a little bit of impact on a lot of people. Right?
Yeah.
It's great to make some impact on a lot of people as well, because if you have a big network, it gives you credibility. But I'm telling you, man, if you have that small, strong network,
Mhm.
it is unbelievable where you can get a business from that. But
And
you
if
have to
you,
have the belief and the trust that it will come back to you later.
yeah.
And I guarantee you will. If you do it the right way, it will come back to you.
So you're talking about not just building a tie between you and the member, and obviously there's going to be many members, but also amongst the members. So there's like sideways strength there as well. So
Absolutely, and
connecting.
that's what really creates the community is all
Yeah.
those connections in between.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been so frustrated with Meetup for so long, because it's a great platform
Mm.
for organizing events and communicating to members about, hey, there's an event, but members cannot really communicate properly in between each other than at
Mhm.
the events. That's
Yeah.
why we developed our own platform now where they're able to communicate with each other. We do it a little bit now on in our Facebook group. And since
Mhm.
I actually haven't started using the Facebook group until, I don't know, 6, 7 months ago, like properly. And since we start doing that, we've just seen an amazing change in the way that people relate to us and the community. Now it's not just Patrick, the event organizer. Now it's actually a community, or starting to become a community, because they communicate with each other. Third, it's not two-dimensional. It's not
Yeah.
one way, two ways, three-way communication, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's not something I'm practicing, but I think that makes a huge amount of sense. Actually, what it reminds me of is a very old student project. Actually, was basically a dating project. I found this a really fascinating subject, actually. And I did loads of kind of homework. My background's in design. And I went along to a bingo night, a bingo day, and basically to observe if that was a kind of activity, that the older generation would kind of date through. And what I saw was that you get a guy sitting on his own over here playing bingo. You've got a girl, a lady sitting over here on her own. And unless somebody actually went up to them and says, Bob, meet Judy, Judy, meet Bob, they would sit separately for years on separate desks, at the same desk every single week at the same bingo hall. But you just needed somebody to introduce them. And then, that relationship, might not be a romantic relationship necessarily, but that relationship would be highly cultivated and have a very good chance of being some
Yeah,
benefit there. Yeah,
yeah.
I find that really
So,
incredible, actually.
first of all, again, remember, as I said before, people are only focused on what things can do for you and other people can do for them,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And to buy anything from anyone, right? So
mm,
let's say I want to buy something from you.
mm,
I need to trust you first. Okay. So I need to trust two different areas. You as a person, personally, and I need to trust you that you as a professional, that you deliver, like that you are good at what you do. The first thing is the personal trust. That's what you need to establish first. And that's what most people completely miss out on in networking. They go directly to pitching, and here's why we're good at this. And all. It's all about the personal stuff first.
mm.
So once I trust you personally, then I become, okay, well, tell me more about your business. Because now if I can see that, hey, you're an honorable person, you're trustworthy. And so one of the things that people gauge whether you're trustworthy or not is whether they're not just into themselves. Do they
Mhm.
do things for other people's reasons, right? Do they do something to help other people? So if you have seen, like for example, I know I've thrown you a couple of leads over the time, right?
Mm.
I've introduced
Yeah,
you to a few
yeah,
leads.
absolutely.
So you've seen me demonstrate that, hey, I'm not just into selling stuff to you. I gave you stuff, right?
Yeah.
Without asking for anything in return. That is an amazing trust builder, like amazing trust builder. So again, just trust that when you do that, it'll come, and you do it with the right people, it will come back to you, because now they trust you, and they might not buy from you, but they might recommend you other stuff. I mean, other
Yeah.
other people.
And that circle's continually growing. I guess that's an asset that you're in control of, and you kind of own that asset. That asset is you. Obviously that takes time, commitment, to cultivate that. And so I know you talked a little bit about going bankrupt when he's young, and had a few, as you said, fail forward situations, which we've all had a few of those. So to reach that, I mean, it's the biggest learning there is, and I always feel that the most important learning always comes the hardest way, right? But to reach that conclusion, that really was quite a leap of faith, was it not? You've had perhaps some situations where the business didn't grow as quick as you wanted, etc., and you've maybe adjusted it, etc. To then have this approach where it's not a quick win, and just to keep kind of sowing the seeds there. That takes
Yeah.
a lot
Yep.
of commitment and
It does take that courage that, hey, it will work. But when you've seen, um, sometimes you just do it naturally. I think in the early days I just kind of did it because somebody came and asked me, oh, do you know a lawyer, or do you know this and that? And I was like, okay, I want to help out this person. And then I connected them, and then I saw the results of that happening many years later, or not necessarily many years, but sometime later. I saw it happening. So that's interesting. And then also just reading and learning from very, very successful people that talk about it all the time. And I can see that it's mainly people that has been in business for a while that really truly understands the power of building a strong network and doing this. But they just have the faith that they know better than me, and so I start doing it more.
Mm. Yeah.
When you create triads, like you introduce somebody to somebody else, call it a triad. I heard from a guy called Evan Pagan, which is one of the most successful internet marketers. He says when you build about 6 to 8 of these triads, miracles happen. Okay, and he says you've seen it again and again and again for people. 6 to 8 of them, and there's just something that just happens, and he can't describe why or explain why, but he can just observe that it does happen, right?
Yeah.
So, and by the way, the right way to build these triads is not just introduce people to each other and then leave them alone, right? The way you really need to do it is introduce them to each other and then follow up and actually kind of build a relationship within that, build like a mini group, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right way to do it.
So you actually kind of nudge them along a little bit. You're really being the matchmaker there, but not just leaving them at the first date. You're kind of making sure they get the second and the third date
Exactly.
happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And you're interjecting yourself, and you might not know these people really, really well, but if you're interjecting and kind of being the leader of that because you introduce them, you're also establishing yourself as that leader, and then making sure and then, doing whatever you can for them to get the value out of that relationship that you have introduced them to each other. And then you're establishing yourself as an incredible value for them.
Well, I guess this comes back to the influencer element. You're not just doing the little bit, you're actually influencing that relationship, kind of dragging it along a little bit. Obviously, it's got to, at some point, get a little bit of momentum on its own right, or there's got to be some exchange between them, or it's not going to blossom. But
and by the way, I've just seen the power of that through this COVID thing. Because I had somebody contact me and said, well, they had supplies for COVID stuff, related stuff, medical stuff, if I know any buyers. And so I connected two suppliers with 5 potential buyers. Mm-hmm. And I get a very, very small percentage. Yeah. But we're talking about numbers that are so astronomical that those small percentages can be hundreds of thousands, right? So now I'm like on a major scale seeing the value of having built that network and building those strong relationships.
Yeah, but I can tell, from my exchanges with you, that's never been your focus for sure. In fact, I remember some time ago having a conversation with how can I, thank you for the lead or for the introduction. How can I help you? And he was like, no, thanks for the thanks, but that's all good. There was nothing there, and so yeah, I know that wasn't the forethought, and perhaps these things come back, as you say, stronger for that.
Yeah, and I don't mind money for sure.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't mind that happening, but it's never the thought. I mean, it depends on how much work I put into it, right? Because in this situation, they approached me, and I thought, how can I actually spend a couple of days, mm-hmm. Drumming up some business for them. And in that case, I said, okay, well, I want something out of it, right? Yeah. Because I put some significant amount of time into it. If it's just like, oh yeah, I know Simon, let me connect you, that's fine.
Okay, so do you have? I'm guessing the answer is no, actually, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. Do you have any kind of ratio that you focus on, maybe building networks and that kind of community versus building products and services versus marketing activities? Do you have any sort of ratio for that, or is it all instinctive? Because we all got only so many hours in the day, and all our business always need more hours, right? So you must have to control that and manage that somehow.
Yeah, I would say, spend by far most of your time building your marketing funnels, right? The problem is most small business owners, they use what I call manual marketing. And they will never, and it's incredible how few people actually realize that, ever thought about that, that unless they transcend to automated marketing or semi-automated marketing, they will never become free. They will always be trapped, maybe in a high-paid job if they're lucky, but they'll always be trapped. They'll never be free. So manual marketing is creating content for social media, posting on Facebook, interacting with people on Facebook and stuff like that. Now, if you create viral stuff, it's very hard to orchestrate that to like by design, but that can have some longevity and then give some kind of automated flow of leads in the future. Like, for example, podcast shows are a great example of that, of being interviewed in podcasts that can actually create some longevity for you. But in general, most businesses, they focus on that manual marketing, interacting with people on social media, creating content. The problem with that is that you can't scale yourself. You can't scale your time. And not only that, and this is what comes as a shock to a lot of people. When they do that for a long time, suddenly one day they woke up and they're burned out. And why they're burned out? Because they're spending too much time on doing something that is not their core passion, right? When they got into business, they got in because they loved training dogs, or they loved coaching people, or they loved creating cupcakes. And then suddenly they found themselves spending an enormous amount of time on social media, right? That was not the passion. So if you are doing something that's not your passion for too many hours, it will burn you out, okay? That's why people burn out of a job,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Because it's boring. It's not your passion. So you have to transcend to paid advertising. That's the only thing you can predictably scale.
Yeah.
Okay. And it might take you time to get it right. I mean, it took some time for me to get it right. Yeah. But then when we got it right, we just we turn up the dial literally from 1 week to the next. And then we went boom. We went from 60 people at the events to 125 within 1 month.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of a summer where nobody attends events. And it was actually in a time of the Olympics, where I thought, oh my God, nobody's going to come here, and all the money I've spent on this advertising is going to be wasted. But in fact, it put us on the map, actually doing that.
Yeah, so it's massively important, and my experience is exactly the same, and it takes a while to get there. But once you've got it, usually that can be with you for a long, long time. I know some people are constantly sort of recirculating their adverts and changing them constantly. I personally, I've not had that experience. If I found a way to reach the audience and I found a item that appeals to that audience, then I've just got to put that thing in front of that audience more often, and that's going to be a good thing. And obviously, there can be some scale to that through advertising. It's not always infinite, but can be some significant scale. So it's incredibly important to find that. I personally only really discovered that when we stopped using other people to try and do it for us, and went through the hard yards to actually basically learn it myself. And there's a learning curve for that, for sure. But that knowledge will always be with me forever, and has helped move that business forward. So I recommend that. Just want to come back to this ratio. So you wake up in the morning, yes. You go, okay, I'm going to spend an hour on networking today, or do you have a hard ratio? Or
I would say, for most businesses, I would say go out to 1 to 2 events a week, right? Two would be the absolute max. Unless you have tested that you can very, very quickly, and this is literally your main way to do business for now, and then you convert a high amount of people really, really quickly, then I would go crazy and then just do 1 or 2 networking events a day. That's absolutely, and I know people that do that, and they do very, very successfully. Yeah. But I would say 1 to 2 networking events a week. That's probably enough. But also don't do at least do a couple of months. At least a couple of months, because again, for most people, it won't. It will take a time before it comes back to you. But it's like wine. The stronger you build your network, and that's what people go wrong. They go to a networking event and say, "Oh, I didn't get any business out of it," and then they go to another one. They go to a different group, and then say, "Oh, I didn't get anything out of that," right? And that's just, it's bound to fail if you think like that. You got to go back to the same events over and over again, meet the same people at least 3 times before you have trust building, like real trust. Yeah. Say the second time somebody meets you, they recognize you. The third time they meet you, then they start to build some trust. Right. So it's only really after the third time you'll actually start to build some real trust.
Yeah,
Okay.
that can make sense.
And that's where people go wrong. So don't go crazy, like go to 10 networking events a week, and then you after a month you burn out because you didn't get anything out of it, and you say, oh, this didn't work. That's not how it works. It's over time.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes skill. It takes skill. It's not like most people just don't have the skill. It takes skill to be good at it.
Yeah, it's not something that's natural for me, and I know there's a lot for me to learn here. One thing I have found really valuable for networking is if I do have a new product or service, you can this is kind of circles back to where we were at the start. We're talking about pitching, and you can deliver the same, a pitch 20 times over lunching networking. I mean, you can adjust that on the fly and get immediate response and go, no, no, no. Oh, that one landed. And 1 hour of networking could take a year to learn, get those insights from just doing pitches online and web pages, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So very valuable there. So I think that's a good place to wrap up. It's been really pleased to get you on the call today. I learned a lot from this call. Thank you for giving up your time. It's really appreciated.
You're welcome.
So that was Patrick Powers, Patrick M. Powers. Hope you got some value from that. As you can tell, I hope it comes across in the interview there, that Patrick is one of those guys that just really gives a huge amount of value. Personally experienced Patrick giving me leads and prospects without ever asking anything in return. And even more than that, when I actually offered it, he refused. So perhaps I shouldn't be surprised that he's again offered to kind of give, and he's going to give you three chapters of his new book, which is called the New Marketing Manifesto. And it talked a little bit about the book offline actually, and it sounds a really interesting book. And I personally am really looking forward to getting my hands on both those preview copies or chapters, as well as the full book. And hopefully, with a little bit of luck, I might get a chance to do a full review of that book in the coming months. So that's it from me. Hope you got a lot of value from that. And I look forward to speaking to you again in the very near future. That's it from me, over and out. Bye for now.